We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us this morning. Our guest with us is Murfreesboro Police Chief Carl Durr. He's with us. He's been on the force now as the head of that department for 6 months now. And it's good to have him on. And with him, Sergeant Kyle Evans. Many of you know him, of course, from the many stories, the face of the department in large measure when they have things going on. Thank you both for coming on this morning. And we've got some more phone calls. Let's take a few here as we go through. And it likely has to do with some of the officers' reactions to what we're seeing these days. And Taylor, good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning to the officers. This is a pertinent program at this time, and I'd like to say, first and foremost, I'm very much a fan of the police department in Metro and Murfreesboro. I think they both are very, very professional. I would disagree with Joe on that last statement about the Tulsa shooting. That one looks pretty bad to me, and we'll just wait to see how that one turns out. But I think the body cameras are a good idea, and I'd rather see Metro spend that million plus they're talking about spending on cameras versus more high-powered weapons and that sort of thing. But the one thing I'd like to say is when I was 16 years old, I had a friend who had a very small motorcycle, 125, 150 cc, and he was also 16. He made a right-hand turn before right-hand turns were legal on that motorcycle. Deputy chased him for 3 miles till he finally crashed into a brick mailbox and was killed. I have been so disappointed in so many of these police chases. Of course, that one will always bear with me, but I know there are chases that are very, very necessary, but I know also the public, the innocent public, is so in danger in those cases, just like the one in Murfreesboro. And I'd like to see more and more training and rules on when to chase and when not to chase.
Great point, and I'm glad he mentioned that. You know, I did a story with you on the situation with that very tragic chase that ended in Murfreesboro, and you were somewhat critical of some of the efforts by deputies and sheriff's departments in chasing and the way it played out there with that horrible wreck on Church Street that claimed that woman's life.
Well, I'll counter and say I wasn't critical of the officers. I was critical of the policies.
Okay. Yes, and the policy, and that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, because the big difference there is law enforcement. We've got to put sanctity of life up extremely high. Because when we are chasing somebody, we're pushing them beyond their driving capabilities. Our officers are highly trained. We train them when they're allowed to get involved in chases, and for our agency, it's violent felonies.
Okay.
So we don't chase over traffic infractions. Now, when I started law enforcement 30 years ago, we would chase over traffic infractions, and I almost crashed one time. I said, that's it for me. But there are those times when we need to chase somebody, those violent offenders, the person that commits a homicide or shoots somebody. We need because the likelihood of them killing somebody else is great, and so then we have to put more effort into
even
chasing
then
them.
Though, are there also, and you're right, in this case in Murfreesboro where it ended there, it was not involving your department, was not a violent felony. I think it was a car theft, but beyond the violent felony, how do you make judgment calls when the vehicle starts making its way into a populated area and you realize there are more targets for potential harm?
Well, and that's it. You've got to take time of day, the weather, road conditions, traffic on the road. Can you identify this individual? But what is that crime that occurred? Have you confirmed the crime? So there's just so many multiple inputs that go into that. But again, you've got to weigh all that against the sanctity of life, because you're not only risking the offender, but you're risking all the citizens that are on the roadway. You're putting them at risk too, because you have a 6,000-pound missile going into somebody. So and it can end up very tragically, and we've seen that throughout the country.
Yeah. All right, let's go next to JD. Hi, JD.
Hey, good morning, sir.
Good morning, JD. What can we do for you?
Well, I've got a simple comment that'll be a comment and it'll appear at the end of it. My grandfather taught me years ago, when you see a blue light behind you, there's caution lights. But when you see a blue light behind you, that's law enforcement. So, at the time when you see the blue light, common sense tells you to pull over and comply with that blue light because that's a law enforcement behind you. Now, these people that don't want to pull over, there's something wrong with them. They got to go back to the Bible. God had his law back in his day. That's what these law enforcement police people are doing now, men and women. So the common sense here, when people don't pull over, they've got something to hide. So that's what law enforcement is. Now, the period at the end of this, that the law enforcement don't enforce the law for about 3 days. See who comes to begging people, then for the law enforcement to do their job. That's the end of the period. You have a good day, and thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Is it that cut and dried? I mean, I hear where he's coming from. He's a law-abiding citizen, and you comply with... I guess this goes back, though, to what I was mentioning earlier, is that there are some people that are maybe a little more fearful of when they're being pulled over, as opposed to thinking this is going to be a good law enforcement officer. Maybe he's going to pull me over and shoot me. Okay, that's out there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
That's the perception among many African Americans, that they're worried if they're getting pulled over, something bad is going to happen beyond getting a traffic ticket.
Right. I get it, and that's why we have training, and I think maybe there's more dialogue that we need to have with the community. How can we incorporate the youth, African American youth that are feeling that? How can we bring them in and maybe do ride-alongs? Let them experience what it's like for that officer so that they hear the other side. So I think, again, talking so that we both hear each other, and so that people understand, hey, those officers are walking up in the car. Let me just keep my hands out in plain view. But then again, I heard a story, not here in Murfreesboro, but where a situation got escalated because the person didn't exactly put their hands where they exactly wanted them.
Yeah.
Well, we've got to work through those situations as law enforcement, and not, But I think it stems down to mutual respect on both parties.
Absolutely.
Respecting that the officer's doing their job, but at the same time, the officer needs to respect the person they're pulling over. So have that. De-escalate on both sides.
And that's just basically from getting to know one another. Kyle, I've seen it firsthand when I've been out at Night Out Against Crime, or you've lined up stories for me in the past where we've gone out with your officers who do the community policing. That's where it's best. I've been with them when they're on their bicycles making their way through neighborhoods, and the kids coming home from school. I remember doing a story, I forget what it was based around, where they knew all the kids by name. And the kids saw them, and I just hope that's the whole idea of that. Are you doing more of that?
Yeah, we have a huge investment in community policing, not just in the neighborhoods, but in the schools. And you're exactly right. We try and start as young as the kids, as young as kindergarten, to really just reach out and make efforts. We have a recent program where officers are going to be reading books to children. If they see someone just in the neighborhood, they can stop and they're going to read the book with the child, and then give them the book to go home and share with their family. And something, it's Read 20, which is part of First Lady Haslam's initiative to try and help bridge gaps between law enforcement and the communities we serve. So absolutely, community policing is really at the heart of the mission of every police officer, not just the ones that you see on the bicycles in the neighborhoods, all police officers.
And it's not just kids, but you're right, kids is where it's great to start. In Mount Juliet, where I live, we have Coffee with a Cop. And they sent it out, and every once in a while they're either at a Starbucks or one of the restaurants in town. You can just show up there and there'll be an officer there just having some coffee, and you sit there and chit-chat. You know what I mean? And something like that's not a bad idea, just to get people to know one another. Let's see. Next up is Mary. Hello, Mary.
Good morning.
Hi, Mary. What's on your mind?
Can you understand me okay? Because it don't seem to be a good, clear line.
Oh, we hear you pretty good.
All right, that's great. Basically, a lot of people have been saying the same thing that I feel. I have a lot of respect for the officers and what they go through and what they're trying to do for us. And I don't understand why people are just all ready to fight with them. They're there to protect us, and I realize the risks that they have to face all the time, and I respect that so much. And And I just want them to know how much I appreciate them, and I hope that they all make it through all the different situations that they have to go through. And if people just had some good sense when they're approached, and not try to run, because that automatically is putting them in jeopardy, and just trust the police is what they need to do.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have calls like that. And the trust is what you're trying to build, and that's what we were just talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it takes trust, but we also have to understand that there's been years and years of incarceration of African Americans, and the African American population is frustrated, and we hear their voice. And but again, we have to realize it's not just police they're frustrated with. It's the criminal justice system. And but unfortunately, the law enforcement, we are the physical representation of that, and we're the ones that are out in the community. So we feel their lack of confidence out in the field.
Yeah. All right, listen, we're going to take a break on that. When we come back, a lot more calls for you. Wow. We'll take a break. When we come back, more for the Chief and Kyle right after this. Stay with us.